What I'm dealing with is hard because it involves more than just my heart. It involves a lot of little hearts. You know, we have 4 kids, and divorce is never easy. And we're both from divorced families.
There are stories that the world thinks it knows. And then there are the real stories, the ones that live quietly behind closed doors, tucked away in the spaces between headlines and interview sound bites. Kelly Clarkson's marriage to Brandon Blackstock was always one of those stories. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. 2 people deeply in love, building a blended family, sharing a life that seemed full of warmth, laughter, and genuine connection. The public bought into it completely because Kelly herself seemed so sure about it. She spoke about Brandon with a kind of conviction that made everyone believe this was forever. But forever has a way of revealing its cracks slowly and then all at once. For years, Kelly stayed remarkably quiet about the details of what truly happened between her and Brandon. She gave hints through her music, she made cryptic remarks in interviews, and she occasionally let something slip on her talk show with the kind of offhand honesty that only Kelly Clarkson could pull off. But the full picture, the real story of who Brandon Blackstock was behind the scenes, what he did, what he didn't do, and what Kelly finally had to say about all of it, remained largely untold. Until now. Because Kelly has begun speaking, and what she is revealing is more complicated, more painful, and frankly more shocking than most of her fans ever imagined. Today, we are going to walk through the entire story, the things nobody knew, the things Kelly herself is only now putting into words, and the truth about a marriage that looked perfect to the world but was breaking apart from the inside. Stay with us, because this story goes much deeper than a simple celebrity divorce. To understand what Kelly Clarkson has begun revealing about her marriage, you first have to understand who Brandon Blackstock really is, not just as a public figure, but as a man shaped by the entertainment industry in ways that would eventually create enormous problems. Brandon Blackstock was born into the music business. His father is Narvel Blackstock, a legendary talent manager who spent decades as the backbone of Reba McEntire's career. Growing up around that level of industry power and connection gave Brandon a very particular worldview, one where relationships, even personal ones, were often tangled up with professional ones, and where the line between love and business could become dangerously blurry. Brandon built his own career as a talent manager, and he was good at it. He managed some significant names, and by the time he crossed paths seriously with Kelly Clarkson, he carried the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing how the industry works from the inside out. What most people did not know, and what Kelly herself would only come to fully understand over the course of her marriage, was that Brandon's world was one where financial decisions were made in the background, where contracts and management agreements operated in ways that were not always transparent, and where the person you trusted most in your personal life was also the person making decisions about your professional life. That dual role, husband and manager, created a power dynamic that Kelly has since described as something she did not fully grasp when she walked down the aisle. When Kelly and Brandon married in October 2013, she was already one of the most successful artists in the world. She had chart records to her name, Grammy Awards, a devoted global fan base, and a reputation for being one of the most authentic voices in popular music. Brandon, in stepping into her life as both a romantic partner and someone connected to her professional world, occupied a position of extraordinary influence. And while Kelly was raising their children, managing a demanding career, filming television, and pouring her heart into her music, certain things were happening in the background that she was not fully aware of. That is one of the most significant things Kelly has started to speak about, the realization that she was not always the one in control of her own story. One of the most shocking elements to emerge from the legal proceedings surrounding Kelly and Brandon's divorce was the financial dimension of their relationship. When couples divorce, especially high-profile couples with significant wealth, the court documents have a way of telling a story that neither party fully expected to be public. In Kelly and Brandon's case, those documents revealed something that stunned many people who had followed their relationship. Brandon Blackstock, through his management company, Starstruck Management Group, had been collecting management fees from Kelly's earnings. On the surface, that is not unusual. Managers get paid a percentage of their clients' income. But the problem, as it came to light, was the scale of it and the nature of the arrangement. Court records indicated that Brandon and his father's management company had collected millions of dollars in management commissions from Kelly. When the divorce proceedings began and financial disclosures were required, the full extent of what had been flowing out of Kelly's earnings became visible in a way it simply had not been during the marriage. Kelly, who had trusted the people closest to her to handle these arrangements fairly, found herself confronting the reality that the financial structures around her had not always been in her best interest. This was not just a matter of money, though the sums involved were staggering. It was a matter of trust. It was a matter of realizing that the man she had built her life with had, in certain ways, been benefiting financially from her in ways she had not fully understood or consented to with complete information. Kelly has spoken in her own carefully chosen words about what it felt like to confront this reality. She described a process of slowly understanding that things were not what they had appeared. She talked about the loneliness of realizing that someone she had completely trusted had been operating in a way that did not fully protect her interests. And she has been honest about how that realization, layered on top of the emotional pain of the marriage falling apart, created a kind of grief that was almost impossible to process. You are not just mourning the loss of a partner. You are mourning the loss of the version of that partner you believed existed, and that is an entirely different and far more complex kind of heartbreak. If there is one symbol that captures the bitterness and complexity of Kelly and Brandon's divorce, it is the Montana Ranch. This property, nestled in the breathtaking landscape of Montana, was deeply meaningful to Kelly. It was a place she had invested in emotionally and financially, a place that represented the life she had wanted to build, the peace she had sought away from the relentless noise of fame. It was home in the truest sense of the word. And when the marriage collapsed, Brandon did not simply let go of it. Brandon fought to retain rights to the Montana Ranch, and the legal battle over this property became one of the most contentious chapters of the entire divorce. He argued that he was entitled to a portion of it, and for a period of time, he actually continued living there even after Kelly had filed for divorce. She was in California, working, raising the children, rebuilding her life, while her ex-husband remained on a property that the court would ultimately rule belonged solely to her. The judge's decision was clear: the ranch was Kelly's. Brandon was ordered to vacate. But the fact that this fight happened at all, that someone would hold on so fiercely to something that was not rightfully theirs, told Kelly something important about the person she had been married to. In various conversations and interviews, Kelly has reflected on what that experience taught her about standing up for herself. She grew up in circumstances where she learned to be agreeable, to work hard and not make trouble, to be grateful for what she had. Those qualities served her well in her career. But in her marriage, they had sometimes worked against her. She had given too much, assumed too much good faith, and trusted too completely. The battle over the ranch was, in a sense, the moment that changed all of that. It was the moment Kelly Clarkson decided she was done being pushed around by anyone. Perhaps the most jaw-dropping revelation in the entire saga of Kelly and Brandon's marriage involves something that goes well beyond their personal relationship. During the divorce proceedings, it emerged that the management company through which Brandon had been representing Kelly, Starstruck Management Group, was facing serious regulatory scrutiny. Specifically, there were questions raised about whether the company had been operating as a talent agency without the appropriate license to do so in the state of California. Under California law, there is an important distinction between talent managers and talent agents, and that distinction carries significant legal weight. The California Labor Commissioner's office became involved, and the proceedings that followed shed extraordinary light on the nature of Brandon's role in Kelly's professional life. The findings were significant. It was determined that Starstruck Management Group had indeed been acting as an unlicensed talent agency, which under California law meant that the contracts between them and Kelly could be challenged. This had enormous financial implications because it raised the very real possibility that the millions of dollars in management fees that had been collected over the years had been collected improperly. Kelly pursued this, and the ruling went in her favor in meaningful ways, though the full financial resolution involved complex negotiations. What makes this so personally devastating for Kelly is not just the legal technicality, is what it represents on a human level. She had married this man. She had had children with him. She had shared her bed, her fears, her dreams, and her deepest vulnerabilities with him. And during all of that time, the professional arrangements surrounding their relationship had elements that were, at minimum, not fully transparent, and, at worst, legally problematic. When Kelly has spoken about feeling blindsided by the divorce and its aftermath, this is a significant part of what she means. The person you trust most in the world should never be the person who creates the most damage. And yet, that is exactly what happened. For all the legal battles, all the financial revelations, and all the very public aspects of the divorce, the dimension of this story that Kelly has been most careful and most raw about is the emotional one. She has spoken, in her music and in occasional moments of startling honesty, about what the marriage and its ending actually did to her as a person. And the picture she paints is one of a woman who spent years trying to hold something together that was quietly destroying her from the inside. Kelly has described feeling profoundly alone within her marriage. Not alone in the sense of being by herself physically, but alone in the deeper sense, the sense of not being truly seen, not being genuinely supported, not having the kind of partnership that she had built her understanding of love around. She talked about going through the motions of a marriage while feeling like a single parent and a solo act in every way that actually mattered. She described the weight of maintaining a happy public face while privately carrying a sadness that she could not even fully explain to herself, let alone to anyone else. What is particularly striking about Kelly's emotional honesty on this subject is how long she kept it contained. She is by nature one of the most open and expressive public figures in entertainment. Her interviews are famous for their warmth and lack of pretension. Her talk show is essentially a study in radical emotional availability. And yet for years, she protected Brandon, protected the image of their marriage, and protected her children from the full truth of what was happening. That silence cost her. She has said as much. She internalized things she should have spoken about sooner. She held on longer than she should have out of love, out of hope, and out of a deeply rooted belief that if she just tried harder, gave more, and loved better, things would turn around. They did not. If there's one aspect of the divorce that Kelly has been most protective about discussing publicly, it is the impact on her children. River Rose and Remington Alexander are at the center of everything for Kelly. They are the reason she held on as long as she did, the reason she fought as hard as she did in court, and the reason she has been so careful about how much she reveals even now. But what has emerged, carefully and gradually, tells a story of a custody battle that was far more fraught than the relatively clean legal outcome might suggest. Brandon sought significant custody of the children, and Kelly was not willing to simply hand over the primary parenting role to a man she had come to see in a very different light. She fought for primary custody, and she won. The court awarded her primary physical custody of River and Remington, which was a profound validation, not just legally, but personally. But the fight itself was brutal. To contest custody is to invite a level of scrutiny into your parenting, your home life, your mental and emotional state that is genuinely invasive and deeply painful. Kelly went through that process while also managing her career, processing the end of her marriage, and trying to maintain as much normalcy as possible for two young children who were confused and hurting. What Kelly has begun speaking about more openly is how her children ultimately helped her find her way through the darkness. She describes River and Remington as her anchors, the two constants in a period of her life when almost nothing else felt stable or trustworthy. She talks about the extraordinary responsibility she felt to model resilience for them, not the fake kind that pretends everything is fine, but the real kind that acknowledges pain while refusing to be destroyed by it. Her children watched their mother go through one of the hardest things a person can go through, and they watched her come out the other side still standing, still singing, still showing up. That, Kelly has said, is the most important thing she has ever done. The shift in Kelly's public narrative over the past couple of years has been subtle but unmistakable. She has moved from a position of careful protection, protecting her image, protecting her children, protecting whatever remnants of dignity remained in the story of her marriage, to something closer to full transparency. Not reckless or vindictive transparency, but the kind that comes from having done the work, having processed the grief, and having arrived at a place where the truth no longer feels dangerous to speak. She has talked about the realization that she spent years in her marriage feeling like she was not enough, not successful enough, not present enough, not everything she needed to be, when in reality, the problem was never her. She has spoken about the insidious nature of a relationship where the balance of power is subtly off, where one person's needs and career and comfort consistently take precedence, and how difficult it is to recognize that dynamic when you are deep inside it. She has talked about the moment she finally understood that the version of herself she was performing inside her marriage, agreeable, endlessly accommodating, willing to minimize her own feelings, was not who she actually was. Kelly has also begun speaking, with increasing candor, about the professional betrayal aspect of what she experienced. She is not inflammatory about it. She does not name-call or catastrophize. But she is clear. She trusted someone with her career and her finances at the same time she trusted him with her heart, and that trust was not honored the way it should have been. She has said that she will never again mix her personal and professional lives in that way, not because she is bitter, but because she has learned something fundamental about protecting herself. That lesson, she acknowledges, came at an enormous cost. But she also says it has made her stronger in ways she could not have achieved any other way. Throughout all of this, The divorce proceedings, the financial revelations, the custody battles, the legal findings about the management company, Brandon Blackstock has remained almost entirely silent publicly. He has not given major interviews. He has not released statements contesting the narrative. He has not gone on television to offer his version of events. That silence is itself a kind of statement, though exactly what it says is open to interpretation. Some people read Brandon's silence as guilt, as the behavior of someone who knows that the truth does not reflect well on him, and has calculated that staying quiet is the safest strategy. Others interpret it as a form of dignity, a refusal to turn a painful personal situation into a public spectacle. What is clear is that the silence has allowed Kelly's voice to fill the space, and that is significant. When one person in a story goes quiet and the other begins to speak, the speaking person shapes the narrative. Kelly is shaping it now. She is doing so thoughtfully and carefully, but she is doing it. And the picture she is painting of the man she was married to, while never cruel, is an honest one. And honesty, in this case, is damning enough.